in the community. We had our first meeting, which was virtual due to COVID in June of 2020. Our second meeting in August, third community meeting in January. The way the project is looking now, it would be doing design development winter and spring with the final design in the summer, which is what we're getting this feedback for, to make sure that we have that the community's feedback on this for the final design. And then public bidding will happen. And then we're anticipating construction starting this fall with a $7.7 million budget and approximately a year of construction. So wanted to just give a quick overview of sort of where the field, how the field falls into that timeline. So the original project was the courts, the natural areas, the playground, but did not include the field because there had been some field renovations in the prior decade. It wasn't on part of this scope. We heard at that first community meeting back in June that the community would like the field to be part of the scope. So I went back to the commissioner and let him know that, and we were able to put design money into the project, but hadn't found any construction money yet. So what we said at the second meeting in August was, we're going to look at the field. We're going to put it as part of the design now, but the construction may be done in a different phase than the rest of the park. But so then the third meeting, but we did get some input from the community on thoughts on the field. So then we went back in January with the news that we had secured funding for construction and that the field would be constructed at the same time as the rest of the park. We showed a field design that included soccer, ultimate frisbee, and kickball. And unfortunately, we're not clear that meant that the softball was coming out. We were unintentionally unclear about that and did not realize when we said these were the sports that were included, that it wasn't clear that that meant that softball was not included. And so that was pointed out to us in May of this year when we were having a separate community meeting about history and interpretive signage in the park. And when we showed a plan, it brought up to us that there was concern in the community, which is why we have reopened these conversations. We were requested to have a meeting. We had that first meeting with the people who requested it on May 25th. We had a follow-up meeting on June 7th where we said we need to be able to have a full community meeting about this, which is what tonight was intended to be. And so that's sort of the history of how the field has progressed through this process.
So we have a question from Abby's phone.
Hi, my name is Abby, and this is my first meeting ever, but I'm just wondering if you guys do remove the field, what is it going to be used for? Are you guys adding a building? Are you guys adding a community center? Like, what's happening?
So
that's a great question. So we're not actually removing the field. The field will stay. Right now, the field that was presented in the design would be a field that has a full-size soccer, 2 U12 soccers, kickball, and ultimate frisbee, all the lines overlaid and could be permitted for any of those uses. The current field gets permitted for all of those things now, but it also has 2 softball fields.
So you guys are planning on getting rid of the softball fields?
That is what the design was, and there's questions and concerns from the community about that. So that's what this discussion is does the field become soccer, ultimate frisbee, kickball, and softball, or is it just the first 3? That's what this conversation is. So the field would still be there. It's just which sports will be permitted on the field.
And the question of there is also a walking track around the field. And the walking track was requested because of the walking track. It prevents there from being 2 fields there as is now. The conversation is about whether or not to, I mean, I guess technically you can still play kickball in the softball, but instead of having a kickball, you would have a softball field, one softball field, which kickball people could make it work, but it would be a softball field that kickball players would be playing on, but it would include a backstop and lighting for us, one softball field. So on the whole, people have voted to reschedule the meeting. I don't know if, I know we've had a few people join. We'll give you the quick context, which is just that the email that went out had a link that did not work. And so some people have been unable to get into the meeting. And because of that, we asked people to vote on whether to keep the meeting or whether to reschedule, so that everybody could get on. What the ultimate decision was, when we last checked with people, although more and more people are joining, was to reschedule the meeting. I'm not sure if people's feelings change now that more and more folks have get on. I think this is the largest meeting that has ever been about this. But I am fine to keep with the decision to reschedule if that's what we want to keep. There's a lot of folks who have not voted. So I'll do one last request around this is, if you have joined the meeting, when we sent the email out, the link in the email did not work. We sent another email with the correct link, and we asked people whether or not they thought we should keep this meeting going with the 45 folks we have now, or should we reschedule the meeting in the case that there are people who wanted to be on it, who couldn't get on it because they had the wrong link. We do know that some people forwarded the link. So there's, those folks may not have seen the new email because they weren't on the original email list. They were just clicking on the link that was forwarded to them. And so maybe they are not on. So with that, if everyone could just take a moment to weigh in. A check means keep this meeting and let's keep moving forward. And X means cancel this meeting and reschedule so that we can get everybody on. So check if you think we should keep the meeting going. X if you think we should reschedule the meeting.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
So can I just ask what was the cause of the link not working? And is that a possibility that could happen the next time?
What we're gonna probably need to do next time is before we send it, we're gonna check the link. I don't know why it didn't work. I also had the wrong link at first, and then I got the new link. So I don't know what was wrong with it. I just know it didn't work. But what we will do is before sharing it, we will click the link and make sure that it works.
Can I just say, Mariama, that the links for all the previous meetings did work and we didn't have this problem. And secondly, we're now 30 minutes on and you've got an hour scheduled left and you've got a lot of people that would like to weigh in. I don't think it's fair that you would truncate a meeting and try to move to a decision without getting all the full community input. So I just want to register that.
Okay, I hear your perspective. Mike, I'm just trying to process that it went as it went and people had different perspectives. So we will go ahead and reschedule the meeting now because not everyone has weighed in, but the people who have weighed in, most are saying to reschedule. So let's just try to figure out right now when that might be. Could we do it 2 weeks from today on Wednesday, the 14th? All right.
Are you going to poll that?
Yeah, people would need to. So if Wednesday, the 14th works for you, go ahead and change. Go ahead and use the check mark if Wednesday, the 14th works for you.
Same time?
Yep.
Is there any chance that the new field can be grass other than turf, or is that set in stone?
Good question. That was not in the scope of the conversation we were having tonight. If you want to talk offline, we can talk about that, but I don't want to open up a new question if we're going to reschedule.
Right. And I understand,
I have a
guess
conference.
since we're rescheduling, is it something that you all can talk about in the meantime, so that when it's brought up in 2 weeks, instead of saying we never considered it? That's the only reason why I mentioned it, because I
Okay.
would like for it to be considered.
Okay, so you're the first time, this is the first time we're asked in this space. I need to go back. What I am trying to say is, I'm trying to be careful about not opening the entire community process. Like, there were some sets of meetings that happened before, and there is, the other thing that people should know is that this project is one of the first in the equitable procurement. So we are also trying to make sure that as much of this contract goes to minority and women-owned businesses. If we take too long and change too much about the project, that process falls. So I am inclined to say we've got to change the minimum amount possible so that we also give people the ability to bid on it. But
Right. This is my third meeting, and the last meeting was overrun by people going on and on about how upset they were about the baseball field. And we didn't even get to chime in and say why turf, not grass, and talk about temperature and all that. And so because that tends to happen in these meetings, the control is lost. That's, grass. There's a soccer field in Dorchester that just doesn't look good. It's turf, and it's not the same. And with temperatures heating up and things like that.
Here's what I'm gonna suggest. Actually, you have Lauren's email, reach out. The challenge for me is, part of the reason those meetings get challenging is that, like, you open it and then there's 5 different conversations going on. And so I want to make sure that we have a tight conversation. Reach out to us online. I'm not saying that we'll definitely include it. I'm saying if there's a way to do it that was tight, maybe that would be a conversation. My gut would say the best way to keep the conversation productive is to keep it tight. But I'm not gonna shut it down. So let's just talk offline. Because I know that's not perfect, but I think we committed to people, and I have seen it has been hard to facilitate this in a good way. And my concern about another conversation, opening another conversation, is it will just lead us in a not productive direction. But if there's a tight way to do it, I would be open to that conversation.
Chief, just to put on your radar, there were supposed to be some follow-up from Parks on questions about the turf that included the utilization of carcinogenic material and a deeper dive on that. And I don't think we ever got that back. So
okay, so here's what I'm willing to do. Folks who want to talk turf, let's just talk turf offline. Because I'm both sensitive to wanting to keep the meeting tight, wanting to keep to our conversation. I am aware of some of the challenges with turf. I'm also in charge of our environment department, and so let's have an.
But Chief, just with all due respect, it's
Yeah.
hard to take conversations offline and have a community meeting, right?
Right. What I'm saying is, I'm trying to figure out if it can be incorporated in the next conversation, and I'm not sure. I'm not saying that it's a yes or a no. If it will lead us to a not tight conversation, the answer will probably be no. If there is a good and elegant way to include it, then I will do my best. The other option would just be to say no, but I'm trying to figure out how to both hear people, bring stuff in, and also keep the project on schedule. And maybe what we can do, I will try to think about it, but if what I'm saying to you is, hearing about it now doesn't give me a lot of time to try to process things through and do it in a good way. And I'm not going to tell you I can do something that I can't, but I'm also going to try. So I'm willing to have a conversation with people offline. I'm willing to think about whether or not it can come in a good way. What we proposed tonight is that there was only one question we were going to go with. I'm being asked to open up another layer of question. I'm open to trying to figure it out. I'm not making promises.
Thank you,
I just
Chief.
want to be
And-
transparent.
Thank you. And I'll participate. Just include me on that. But I just wanted to be clear that it was raised a couple of meetings ago, and the community, we're still waiting for the responses to when it was raised. We just never got it. But whatever conversation happens, please include me, if you don't mind.
All right.
Chief, may I also propose, particularly for those who may not be able, those who are here but may not be able to attend the July 14th meeting, is that if perhaps Parks could send out some type of form that people can contribute their thoughts or their questions, so that there's an opportunity to kind of review what some of those questions are, and then maybe be able to kind of, you know, put them in different categories to determine whether or not it can be talked about at the next meeting or needs to have a side conversation, because I think there may be, you know, some different thoughts and ideas, because I do see some new faces in this meeting as well.
Yep. And I am open. Here's what I'm gonna say. I'm getting calls from some people who want the process reopened. I'm getting calls from other people who are like, I came to the meeting and we made agreements and now they're being overturned. So what I'm trying to keep it real with y'all is not everybody feels the same way. Honoring what the community is saying is a bit of a challenge because everybody's not saying the same thing. And to be honest with you, I wasn't here for the first 3 meetings, right? Like I hear you, I'm not saying, but I am trying to do my best to facilitate. I think I mentioned to people, facilitation is actually some part of what I used to do for a living, for a chunk of my life. I want to hear people. I want to include perspectives. And I also want to do what we say we were gonna do. And what I did say is we would only talk about one thing. So that's why I am trying to both hear you, trying to listen to people's perspective, but also trying to keep my word.
Reverend Hammond.
Way to do that, I will.
Reverend
Yes.
Hammond.
Yes.
Commissioner, yes, how you doing? Dennis Wilson. I've been in the 90% of the meetings since its inceptions. And the sad thing about this is what I'm seeing. I've talked in most and sat back and listened in some, that we have a good situation, of course, of the remodeling renovation of our loving park that we all so dearly love, all of us, whether it be Latino, Black, white, whatever persuasion. And what's happening is, as I can see, even before you came on board, Commissioner, right, that every time more folks find out, it now becomes more contribution, several great ideas. But what we've realized, and this goes back to Lauren, Mike, and Marissa, and Shauna, that what we don't, and I think most folks understand, we can't make everybody happy, and we're not going to appease everybody and accommodate everybody with everything that they want. We're going to get probably most of what we want, but we're not going to get everything we want. And that's only happens, that never happens. But with the new folks coming on board, Commissioner, now we'll open up a bunch of new can of worms, new ideas, new complaints, new issues, new good ideas, new bad, and we're trying to get to the finish line with this thing. And the way we're going, it seems like we're going backwards, and we make a couple of steps forward, then we in a pause mode. And again, all due respects to everyone. What I don't want, and I'm hearing rumblings, is, we're all God's children. I know your dad well, and you're a servant of the Lord and the messenger, that there are powers that be, evil powers that be, that would love to see us fighting and arguing amongst ourselves over our park. And I hope that this doesn't turn out to one of those, hating kind of things, white against black, black against white, black against Latino, Latino against black, because again, it's something that's going to benefit all of us. We're all God's children. We all got to coexist. We all got to get along. We want the park to benefit everybody of all persuasions, young and old. And I just can see that we just kind of keep going backwards and make increment steps.
Could I interrupt you, Coach?
Let him finish, and then we'll.
Thank you. And these are things, again, at some point in time, Rev, we're gonna have to come to a closure, and we're not gonna make everybody happy. I guarantee you, with the beauty of this park, and that it's gonna, again, most folks are gonna be pleased, most folks are gonna be thrilled, most folks are gonna celebrate the new park, which we deserve, okay, like West Roxbury, like Newton, like Wellesley, like Lexington, like all the other parks. But we can't appease everybody, and I just hope we can continue to move on and make progress and get to the finish line.
Okay.
Just real quick,
Wait, Mike,
Coach.
hold
just-
on.
Mike, there are people who have their hands
got
up.
her hand raised.
Is
So
it-
No, but I just think this is a direct comment that needs to be said because the coach raised something. There are new people participating, I agree. But those of us that have been here, like myself, were not clear, as Lauren said, about the design. We would have weighed in on this at the beginning. So this is not that you didn't, sort of set this up correctly. It's about the setup, right? Like, I feel like we've been switched on here. So I'm not old, I'm not new rather, I'm old. And I agree that there's a problem because we were sold something and then there was a switch. So if we had done that in the beginning, we wouldn't be here. So I just wanted to correct the coach on that and I'll stop.
Okay, so here's what I want to suggest. There are 3 people with their hands raised. I want to be careful to not be trying to have the meeting today that we just agreed we were going to reschedule. So I'm going to ask Chevanese, your hand has been up, Eleanor Williams, and then Joe Feaster. And then we're going to close. What I will commit to is I will try to look at the agenda. But what I am going to be honest about is we said in the last meeting that there would be one more meeting. And I'm going to keep to that because that's what I said we would do. I will try to figure out if there are ways to include other conversations in a good way that can be done in one meeting. And I understand there's a lot of perspectives. So I'm gonna allow those 3 folks to speak. And then Lauren, you are also raising your hand. We'll do that towards the close. Ashley, I see your information in the chat. We will try to take it. I'm just trying to not have a community meeting now that we just agreed we are gonna cancel and reschedule so everybody can be in the conversation. Chevanese, go ahead.
I'm not trying to expand this meeting. I just have one question as the permit holder and who's preparing for the field to actually close in the fall. Is these meetings going to continue to push the timeline back? Because we've had to logistically reschedule our fall season based on the information that we knew going into this year for the field to be closed for renovations. So continuing these meetings, are we looking at a delay in that timeline?
So the reason that we were only having one more meeting was because we could still stay on the timeline that we had agreed to you, to other permit holders, to the folks who are bidding on the project. I am gonna keep us to one more meeting. And what I'm gonna figure out is there a good way to talk about one additional issue? Can we do it in a way that can close well? Can we do it in a way that if we can't come to agreement, it defaults to what already was? I will figure out from a facilitation perspective what we can do. But I will keep us on the timeline so that we do not disrupt even more.
Thank you.
Eleanor, go ahead.
Yes. Hi. So I just want to say that when this whole process first started with the side that I live on Washington Street, I was very much involved in attending these meetings. I sent several emails to Lauren, and, really just voiced my thoughts. And I felt we were on the right track, in terms of hearing the voice of the community and making sure that changes, we want to have change that allows us to beautify, but at the same time, we want to make sure that when we make the changes, they reflect the interests of those who live in the community who have been using the park. You know what I mean? Like, we don't want, like the basketball courts, for example, I'm speaking of this side, removed when we know good and well, Black folks tend to play basketball and they're going to use it. So if you change it to like a soccer field, you might change who actually uses the park. So I thought we were kind of clear about just making sure that we weren't making changes that might cause a real shift in who's using the park and change the faces, the color, whatever, of those who are using the park. I hopped onto this meeting because after attending those meetings and feeling like, we got to the point where, we voted on the designs and all that, and I thought we were pretty much set. I heard that it was, and my understanding was that the soccer field wasn't being touched. The baseball field wasn't being touched. When I was informed that that was actually happening, and I said, okay, wait a minute, I better chime in. I decided, I'm going to shut up in a minute. I decided to chime into this meeting because I heard that there was a big thing about the softball field being removed. And that's what bothers me, because again, I said, wait a minute, I thought we were kind of clear, about the actual use of the park. And when you just mentioned, what was chosen, like Frisbee, and those kinds of things, I'm saying to myself, wait a minute, what happened? We talked, like what happened? So yes, we were talking about this part, the Malcolm X Park on Washington Street, but that same kind of mindset, the conversation that, informed that conversation, I thought that was going to really inform the decision that was, any other decision that might have come up with the park, the actual park. Did I make myself clear just now?
Yes. So
Okay.
here's what I'll say. That we have identified, multiple people have said that was not clear. So I do want to, there are a couple things we're saying. The park is already used for soccer. It's already zoned for soccer. There are already kids that play soccer there, right? So it's not a change to make it a soccer field. It already had been there. Where there was a change was the removal of the softball fields. It has always been zoned or both, and the proposal moved to zoning for only one. The truth is, the rest of the stuff, Frisbee, those are all just layered on. The other important thing that I think folks do not that hasn't come up is the walking track. The walking track is a part of the tension, because in order to make a walking track that is ADA accessible, like it's slated so that anybody can use it and it doesn't require you to go up and down, or it's all level, it makes it impossible to include 2 softball fields. So I just want to note that is another that's another thing in the mix that has played out in how the field got designed. Once that was added, it changed what was possible on the field. So just from a factual perspective.
Well, the only other thing I wanted to say, well, Marcella Park is an example of how you can have a softball and you can have a track and you could have those things up to protect people. I think they could expand the fence, to protect people who are walking. I walk there all the time. The only other thing I want to say is I understand the importance of moving the process, but I think that if this is a big deal, it might be necessary and beneficial to really listen to the consumers, like to make that, extension of a meeting, like think about how to coordinate an actual meeting that might extend it just a little bit more for people to, brainstorm about how it can address more. Sometimes you have to have more voice at the table in order to really kind of think out of the box. That's all I'm suggesting. And it might require that. I hear about, women who are, in the small businesses, minority-owned small businesses taking on, businesses taking on these projects and all. That's important, but I don't think that will be forfeited by extending the conversation, allowing people to have voice. We're the ones who are going to be using it. So it's very important for us to be happy, you know what I mean, with what we actually have. Folks feel like they weighed in.
Mr. Feaster?
Thank you very much, Commissioner, and congratulations on your appointment. I'm going to speak to this. I've been a resident there since about 1970, living on Dale Street on one side, on Elmore Street on the other. But I want to talk about the process, and I want to first commend Lauren Bryant and the Parks Department for the process that they put in place, which those of us who agreed to attend the meetings to discuss the renovations that were going to take place at Malcolm X Park, we participated in an open and public process with plenty of notice, which after several meetings were brought to conclusion, as we felt, and from the process standpoint, and had community support for a particular use of the park and its renovations. So I think that as the city begins to look at it, and I think of things both from a neighborhood standpoint, but also from as a lawyer standpoint, the city put out a process. The process was open. Process was noticed. Those who were notified participated, and we came to a conclusion as to what we wanted at the park. So what has happened once that occurred, to me, is outside of the public process that had been designed by the Parks Department. So I think, Commissioner, as you go back and deliberate with the parks, please look at that, because there are the implications of what that means if after the process has been put in place and changes have been made. So I'm not going to speak to what's good or what's bad, but I do want to encourage you to take a look at the process. Thank you.
Okay, so it is 7 o'clock. We agreed that we were not going to have the full community meeting now. We agreed we were going to reschedule. Lauren, I'm going to ask you to share quickly, and then I'm going to just talk through what we are doing moving forward, because basically we're trying to have the conversation. But I will say this, I have gotten outreach both from people who say it is not fair to reopen because I participated and we made agreements, and people who feel like I didn't know about it, I would like to weigh in now, and people who were like, I was there and I don't think all of what was said. So I just want to be really clear. We should not act like there is a community voice and a community perspective. There's actually quite a few perspectives I'm hearing from all of you all, and I'm trying to balance it. Some of y'all don't know me and some of you do. Like, I've only been a city official for the last 2 months. Before that, I was a community resident engaged. I am trying to do the best I can to recognize the fact that all of you are part of the community and you do not all have the same perspective. And I'm trying to honor as close as possible what we said we would do, recognizing that sometimes we made mistakes in how we approached it, trying to hold all of those. So I just want to say we are going to close down. I'm going to have Lauren share what she's going to say. We are going to reschedule for 2 weeks from today, same time. We are going to put together a link and we are going to test it 2 times before we send it out so that we know that it works, and then we'll come back. We're going to have a tightly facilitated process. I know we will talk about the question of the field and whether or not a softball field is included or not. Just know some people are advocating for it to be there. Some people are advocating for it to not be there. There are multiple perspectives. We're going to settle that conversation. If there's the possibility of another conversation and we can do it in a tightly well-facilitated way, I will try to make that also happen. Lauren, did you want to add anything? And then we're going to close and we are going to have the meeting in 2 weeks as we agreed we were going to do.
Excuse me, some of the new people don't know why the baseball field is being taken out though.
Right, and so what I'm saying is we actually have a presentation that we did just do, but we're going to do it again. What we agreed is that because the link didn't work at first, that there was a possibility that people who wanted to be in this meeting didn't have the right link and therefore they couldn't be here. Everyone agreed, not perfectly. We are going to reschedule 2 weeks from now. We're going to do the same presentation. We're going to have the conversation, and then we will have people weigh in. There has been another suggestion that we will try to make happen. Marisa Luz basically said, could we do some sort of online way for people also to weigh in? We will try to figure out how to do that in a good way. Because the question
sounds
is
good.
How to make sure we get everybody's attention.
Sounds good, but just make sure everyone knows the reason why they want to take out the baseball field, because
Right.
a lot of the new people don't know
Right.
the
So
complaints.
there are two issues. we could get back into this deeper, but I'll just say very
Okay.
quickly.
All right.
There are
okay.
folks who feel that the softball fields have produced more negative activity in the park. I would
Right.
need to have a longer conversation about that. And
Okay.
it's the second constraint, which is that people who wanted to add a walking track around the park, cut the park off from being able to have 2 fields like it is right now. If you add that, you can't have 2 fields. And that was a second issue. But it was not clear. There were a lot of things we're trying to do to rectify the fact that lots of people who did participate did not get clarity that was even happening. So really quickly, Lauren, is there something that you wanted to add before we close out?
Yes, I did. I just wanted to make sure that everybody had my email address if they need it. I'm putting it back in the chat now. For anybody that can't make it to the rescheduled meeting and wants to email me your thoughts or concerns or, thoughts one way or the other, please do that and we'll make
I don't
sure
know
it's
which one.
added.
It's
I'm sorry.
Lauren.Bryant@Boston.
What's that?
So I just want to make sure that if whatever anyone emails me, even if you can't make it to the meeting, will be shared with the city team and those making the decision about moving forward. And that will be part of the conversation, even if you can't make that meeting. So I just want to make sure that everyone is aware that you can send that to me.
Can you repost all the chat? Can you send that to everybody? How do we get all of the chat comments out of this session? I'd like to see those. Is there a possibility for that to be sent to the listserv?
I've never been asked that question. Kathy, do you happen to know if that's something that we can do?
Well, I think what we need,
Go
just to
ahead.
clarify, what we need to do, I think if we can create a form, that will be ideal. We will also need to clarify with folks and get their permission, because if we're making it public comment, then they just need to know.
Yeah, this is a public meeting and those comments are public now. So I imagine sharing them with the public that was on the meeting would
What
be
I'm saying is,
okay.
no, if people send us an email, my understanding is you're asking if people send us.
No, I'm talking about the chats in this conversation that have been
Okay.
posted. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay, so the chats is what you want.
I'd like to see those shared with the community because they get sort of in your possession and we never really get a chance to digest all of the comments that were made in the chat because they just get lost. I don't have access to that anymore, to my knowledge.
No, everyone can save the chat. If you look in the chat box, there's 3 little dots and you just click on that and hit save chat.
Thank you, Marissa.
Okay.
That was more my question of I had not, I know
Thank
that
you.
others in our
Okay.
office could have done that for me, but I didn't know how to do that. So thank you, Marissa. That was my question, Mike, was just, I didn't personally know how to do that.
I just don't see the 3 dots, but I'll find it. Thank you, Marissa.
It may be different on an iPad or a phone. So I think if that's information, we will make sure that we capture that and download that.
Yeah, I'm on
So
iPad, so I don't see the option.
If you are not able to, please reach out to Lauren and I think we could figure out how to get that to you.
Thank you.
All right. We will see you again Wednesday, the 14th of July. Let me make sure that's the right exact day. Yes, Wednesday, July 14th. We will meet again at 6 o'clock.
Chief, will
Yes.
you invite BPD to the meeting as well? I think I know for myself and others, a big part of this is enforcement. And BPD being able to do that, and the more that I think we keep them out of the process, then I don't think we're really bringing them into the fold as they really have to be to deal with some of the important underlying issues. And I'm not expecting that they would present, but that they be invited to be present so that they're aware of the concerns that are going to be fleshed out in your presentation.
We need to bring them into, we need to bring them into the loop at some point because it's going to go better. That's going to be one of the things that has to be addressed.
So I am willing to invite them. What I will say is, I'm not saying on the agenda, we can also add a conversation with BPD about that. That
Sure.
conversation may not fit into one meeting. So I want to keep it real about, like, my concern is that if they come, then because people haven't been able to talk to them up until now, it'll turn into a, like, let's talk with you about whether you've been a good, so I don't mind inviting them as long as we don't put all of our attention on them. We focus on the conversation that we've agreed to have. But
They-
I'm also willing to
They need-
facilitate,
I'm
hold on,
sorry.
I'm also willing to facilitate a follow-up conversation with them around enforcement, because in all truth, this is not the only park in which you all are expressing concerns that are similar to other places, and BPD is a.
Thank you, Chief.
Fair enough.
All right. All right. We will see you in 2 weeks. We'll make sure that we send it out. If you put your email in the chat, we will add you to that list. If you join later and we don't have your email, take a moment right now, put it in the chat so we can make sure that you're on the list. You're getting the emails directly from us, and we will follow up from there. And you also had Lauren's email. If you took that, you're also good, but please take a moment to add your email so that we get everyone, if you didn't get this before.
And I added mine back in again, just in case people didn't get it earlier in the chat.
I'd also put a link to the website, I can drop it again, where past meetings have their videos and presentations available to peruse at your own pace, if you need some refresher on where we've been.
Excuse me, Reverend Hammond, I wasn't aware. Who was it today, the gentleman asked to add to the meeting or invite to the meeting? I didn't hear.
BPD, the Boston Police Department. You're on mute.
Coach Wilson, you're muted still.
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah. In other words, I gather when this all comes to a conclusion, that the Parks Department, which we found out through conversation, some folks are complying with the permits and some folks aren't complying with the permit. So
It's a little bit more complicated than that. I've spent some time really doing some digging. I decided not to bring this in, but I've heard lots of misconceptions from a lot of folks who are on different sides that I don't even want to suggest there are sides.
No, and I don't want to strike up a whole nother.
But I've spent some time there. I will share